So I'm currently working on some pure training material for a client, but I thought one of the pieces that I've included in here is about direct declarations of conformity, and I thought I would just go through some examples of correct declarations of conformity and some of the things that are often errors spotted in there. So one of the things that's quite important with regard to certainly pure and ensuring that you have safe and compliant machinery is that it's appropriately CE marked. Now the question is, how do you kind of do a quick test or a quick inspection or an audit to understand how robust the CE marking of a piece of machinery is? And the first place to go is to the Declaration of Conformity. But the question then is, well, what are you looking for? What are the details within the declaration that are important, that give kind of insight into the robustness of the certification process that it's gone through? Does the manufacturer or the supplier really understand what they are doing in terms of compliance, achieving and applying correct legislation and correct standards? So let's have a look at a declaration of conformity. We're going to start off with this one, which is an example of what correct looks like, and some of the things that we want to look for. We want to know that they are in there and that it's put together correctly. So the first thing, this might seem very obvious, but it is important and often not there, is the fact that this is an EU declaration of conformity. This is for CE marking. There doesn't have to be the CE mark on the declaration itself. It can be, often is. But up at the top here, we've got explicitly EU declaration of conformity. And this is also stating that it's in accordance with the European and Council decision number 768 about the formatting and what is included in there. The next thing that we've got is the machine is identifiable. So we've got details on there. There's a kind of a 3-word description of the machine. We've got the model type. We've got the serial number. Sometimes you'll also get an image or a picture of the machine. And that is so that we can go, okay, this is what the declaration is talking about. There's the machine. Yes, this is correct. This is what it's in relation to. Further down, we've got the directives and their references. And this is a discrete piece of machinery. We've called it a widget manufacturing machine. And for a discrete manufacturing machinery, these are the 3 pieces, or certainly 3 pieces of legislation, 3 directives that you would expect to see on there. And you've also got the references, and the references in this case are correct. Further down, we've got a list of harmonized standards. So these are standards that have been used to ensure compliance, ensure conformity. And we've used some pretty specific, or at least one specific C-type standard, which is harmonized. So this is industrial thermoprocessing equipment, obviously relevant for the manufacturing of widgets. And we've also got 2 standards, 2 harmonized standards for EMC compliance as well, further down. And then at the very bottom, we've got a signature and a name. We know this guy's got his full name written down here, and he's got his position as well. So he's one of the directors. He's someone with senior authority who can make decisions on behalf of the business. So here we've got, I've just pulled these from the internet. I haven't made these in any fashion, but these are a good example of declarations that we often see tied to pieces of machinery. So we start with this one on the left. This is saying that it's a certificate of conformity. So it's not saying that it's a declaration of conformity. It's got no EU written before it, so it's incorrect. This person evidently doesn't know what they're doing when they're pulling together a declaration of conformity, and therefore do they really know what they're doing with the rest of the CE marking process? What else have we got on here? So this guy, William, we'll get onto him, has cited the machinery directive, which is correct, great, but he's also cited the low voltage directive. Now, it might seem that when you're looking at a piece of machinery that the scope of the low voltage directive also includes that piece of machinery. However, the nuance of the machinery directive stipulates that yes, the requirements of the low voltage directive are invoked, but you don't include a reference to the low voltage directive on the declaration. So that immediately, this guy doesn't know what is in the machinery directive. He doesn't know the requirements. Why has he included the low voltage directive? So immediately my ears are being pricked. He's got no citation to any specific harmonized standards. And I mean, the machine here is a batch fryer, so I can tell you that there are harmonized standards that are going to be applicable to his batch fryer, irrespective of kind of how big it is. And then further down, we've also got, this is a technical certifier. So I'm not sure who that is. We've only got his first name. His name is William. There's no kind of explanation as to kind of what his relationship is with the business, what position he holds, whether he has any authority. So this here, there's a few, as I've listed, quite significant issues with this declaration of conformity. So I'd be concerned if someone gave me that. This one over on the right, this is again a certificate of conformity of machinery safety. Now, I'm not actually sure if this is anything to do with CE marking at all. So there's no mention of any there's no mention of any directives. There is this GB standard. Now, I don't know what a GB standard is, never come across one. No idea what that is. I would probably expect an automatic bottom discharge scraper centrifuge to be CE marked and compliant with the machinery directive, but I don't know. This doesn't tell me that. There's also an expiry date. Now, that's not something that you would see on a declaration of conformity at all. This is about once the machine was put onto the market, does it comply with the regulations? Yes or no? Here's the declaration stating it does. It's nothing about testing, it's nothing about assessment, so therefore there is no date of expiry. And there are similar issues on here to the one that we previously looked at as well. So this, I would say, is actually worse than the one on the left, but I would be concerned if anyone gave me either of those certificates. I'd reconsider purchasing the machine. So here are two more. So on the left here, we do actually have a declaration of conformity. Great, they've got that right. Now, one of the things to note on here, so we've got an applicant and we've got a manufacturer. Both of these addresses are in China. So if these guys are putting this piece of machinery onto the market in the EU, there's no mention here of an authorised representative with an EU address. The manufacturer is clearly not in the EU. So they are missing key information and legitimately they can't actually put it on the market, really. They've done the same thing as one of the previous declarations or certificates. They've cited both the machinery directive and the low voltage directive. They've also got a test standard here. So, yep, okay, 60204 Part 1, Section 18 does have test requirements in there, but the Declaration of Conformity is not about a list of test standards. I would also expect to see a longer list or more extensive list of standards. So I had a quick Google of what a chocolate conch and refiner is. It's a piece of industrial machinery used in the manufacture of chocolate. I'm sure that there are harmonized standards that could be used to assess the compliance and ensure safety of this particular piece of machinery, and they're not listed on here. Again, they've got more comment here referencing a test report. Again, declarations of conformity aren't about testing, they're about compliance. And further down, we don't know who signed this unless his name is manager. There's no information. We don't know what position he holds within the business. So this would be another one where I'd be concerned if I was given this declaration. Then the last one we've got over on the right here. So something they have done correct is they've cited the machinery directive and they haven't cited the low voltage directive. However, their reference 2006-95 EC is not to the machinery directive. I don't actually know what that is to, whether or not it's actually a directive or not. So that's incorrect. Again, they've got no EU address on here. The manufacturer clearly isn't in the EU and there's no authorised representative. The product here they're talking about, or this is in relation to, is a roll die cutting machine. Now that could be anything, sure. But I know that there are Type C standards that will cover things like metal sheet rolling, there'll be polymer processing. So irrespective of kind of what it's processing, there will definitely be Type C standards that could be listed down here. And they haven't listed any. These are very generic standards and non-specific. So this is just a quick insight into the things that I would look for when presented with a declaration of conformity. Now, it is important that when you're procuring machinery from a supplier or the manufacturer, that you do a bit of a sanity check. Is the machine that you're procuring, is it safe? Is it compliant? The best way or the best thing to look at in order to do that, certainly the first thing, is the declaration of conformity. If they've managed to get that right, then there's a good chance that the rest of the machine is compliant, it's safe, it is in line with the standards that have maybe been cited on the declaration. But if there are things in there that are wrong, then that's a good indicator that the manufacturer, the supplier, doesn't understand the CE marking process, and the machine probably isn't compliant. Okay. So it's important that those people responsible for procurement of machinery can do things like scrutinize a declaration of conformity, that they know what they're looking for when they're in the process of selecting machinery from a manufacturer. I was recently chatting with a small manufacturer. They'd procured a piece of machinery and they'd been sold it on the basis that it was CE marked. And I'd taken a look at it, and very quickly I could see that this was not compliant with the standards that are applicable. And they're left in a position where they're unable to do the rectification work to ensure that it is safe for their operators. They're probably going to end up scrapping the machine and having to buy another one that is actually compliant. So it's a very costly process. So we need to be understanding what does compliant look like? How do we find machines that are safe for our operators to use and that they are safe to be put on the market? So I hope that's helpful. I hope that gives you some insight. I hope from that you might be able to identify machines that are safe and compliant, and procure equipment which does not put your operators at risk and doesn't create work for you in having to do rectification work to ensure or achieve compliance.